speaker, Glennys Mackay. Glennys is the Queensland Director of MUFON. MUFON stands for the Mutual UFO Network. She runs a UFO support group in Brisbane. She is a teacher and a lecturer in metaphysics and the paranormal, and is a spiritual minister. Glennys will be hosting the Australian International UFO Symposium from the 11th to the 13th of October this year. There are some brochures, etc. available outside for that. She's been a very, very busy person. Glennys has had her own personal ET encounters in Australia and overseas. She lived in New Zealand for over 20 years, where she was actively involved with the Catholic Board of Education and various charity groups. In Australia, she studied at the university in subjects such as computer sciences, accounting and social sciences, and she is also a hypnotherapist. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please make welcome Glennys Mackay.
Thank you very much. You'll have to bide with me because I'm a little nervous. One of the things that when I heard Kelly, she brought back a lot of memories of my own experiences over the years. I've brought a collection of photos and that here, but besides giving a little touch on some of my own experiences, I thought I'd like to just share with you some of the latest update coming out of Brazil of the actual crash landing of a disc and the capture of human-looking people. There were 7 actually, and 3 were captured alive, 2 were injured, were taken to a hospital, and the other 2 died. This was on the 20th of January this year, and the other 2 died around April when they were taken to Sao Paulo, to a military base there. And of course the crash disc was eventually put into a plane and taken back to America. We're very fortunate to have Professor Adamar Javad from Brazil, who is actually going to be giving you a lot more details. I've actually brought a few photos, and just for a thrill I thought I'd share them to you later. In regard to the photograph of the military personnel that's come forward with a video of the autopsy done by Dr. Polari, who actually did the original autopsy when they exhumed the body of Mengele, the famous Nazi. So there's a lot of things coming out, and Professor John Mack also flew there with Stanton Friedman to do a lot of research in this area on the capture, and so this is bigger than Roswell. So when you come along to our symposium in October, you'll have the pleasure of hearing all about this. My experience as far as my experiences with UFOs, it wasn't until some years ago that I realised that it actually went back to my life when I was a very young child in Tasmania on my parents' farm. I was only very young at the time, and there was this orange round ball of light in our top paddock, and it was early hours in the winter, in the morning. And I remember standing there with my father I had to be very, very quiet as we watched it slowly go across the ground and then lift up and slowly go up into the air and disappear. And his reaction was, well, let's get that on to breakfast. We won't tell Mother that we've seen the moon flying across the sky. So that was the very, very start. But I mean, so I never had connected it with anything else. Although my psychic powers and my intuitive path in my life was always very strong. But as a child, you don't think that you're any different to anyone else. My actual main bizarre experiences started when I went to live in New Zealand. I married a New Zealander and went to live in New Zealand, and back in April 1964, after going to the theatre one night and dropping friends off that lived in the slightly just out of the town where we lived, I was followed home by, I was attracted actually to these lights, that search spotlights that seemed to light up the whole of the area of the paddock. And of course at that stage we lived not far from an airport where these DC-3s were in and out top dressing all hours of the day and night, and this was in April 1964. So I naturally assumed it must have been a plane coming in very late at night. It was around 10:30. But as I noticed the cattle and the sheep scattering in all directions, I started to get apprehensive because this light started to light up the whole paddock, and as I looked, I could see this huge round object that seemed to look to me like it was a couple of stories high with a number of bright lights seemed to be spiralling or moving around the side of it. So of course you can imagine the fear that welled up in me, and as I heard Kelly saying how her fear was, I guess you could relate it to how I felt at the time. So of course I only had a little old Morris, so I remember putting my foot down to the boards and trying to get away from this thing. But it kept up with me until I eventually got back into the residential area. And then of course it went over the tops of the houses. Now it was absolutely huge, and I was so busy watching it at the time that I finished up on the footpath heading towards a power pole. And the next thing I remember was driving in my driveway where when I looked in the rear vision mirror, there it was stationed behind me over the houses. So if you can imagine, it was the size of taking up about 3 houses. When I went in to say to my husband, wake him up and say, quick, quick, I've been followed home by what I thought was a UFO, the first reaction from him was, he looked at the clock and he said, it's 20 to 12, where the hell have you been? You've been out drinking, where have you been? And I said, no, I've been followed home by a UFO. So you can imagine his reaction. So when he got out of bed and we looked out, opened the Venetians, there it was. And then within seconds, it took off and it was over the Tararua Ranges, which is a range of mountains going from Wellington up the centre of the North Island. And within seconds it had disappeared, but the next day on the news it was cited that it had been seen from Invercargill in the South Island to the very north of Kaitaia in the North Island. But I never ever told anybody because I knew that at that stage people would think you're a bit of a crazy nut anyway. My life took a turn from then on. I used to be woken up every night with this strange light that would come penetrate the blinds. I would get out of bed, and it was always around about 11:30 in the evening. I'd get out of bed, I'd go and stand, and I would be telepathically communicating with somebody. I didn't know who. And then I'd go back to bed, exactly 2:20, I'd go back to bed. Now this went on and off for me a number of years. But my gifts of intuition became stronger. I worked at that stage later on in the late 60s and early 70s. I was a personnel officer for a big American company. And it would be terrible because I'd be in the office and I'd be picking up people's thoughts, and I couldn't touch anybody because I'd give them electric shocks. And I had most awful problems with electrical gear around the house. I was always causing problems with the television, the radio. And so it went on, and my intuition and that got so to the stage it would be like looking at a television screen, and I'd be able to hear the news and see what was happening in the future. And I'd put the television on that night and I'd get word for word of what I'd experienced or seen early in the morning or the day before. So I guess I went through a stage where I thought I was going absolutely crazy. But my life over a period of time, because I was so involved with Catholicism, and I was also a foster mum at the time, and I spent a lot of time looking after children and helping and counselling, all this sort of didn't come into my norm. I mean, so this was something entirely different because I was so engrossed in working in the church and working around schools. One of the most amazing things I found was, after all this, I started to go on my search for answers. And it's taken me a long way in many fields, but one of the most amazing things that happened to me, and I guess you probably won't think it was amazing, but in 1970 or 69, my father died, and I had a lot of experience with UFOs. We had one where we lived in the Wairarapa, a little place called Masterton. We weren't far from an airport, and I had a friend who was a helicopter pilot instructor, and so we had about 5 helicopter pilots staying with us doing their training, and many a nights we'd sit out on our balcony watching these lights in the sky. Sometimes they could be anything up to 15, 18 of these, and they'd go into a huge, like a mothership. After that I had a pregnancy, and about this time my husband was transferred. He worked for government. He was transferred in his job to a little place called Hastings in the Hawke's Bay. I was 5 months pregnant at that time, and I was under a gynaecologist because of difficulty in having my children. In fact, I was very lucky to have 2. Well, there had been 10 years difference between my last one and this pregnancy. About a month after we'd been in Hastings, I I'd been a few days earlier to the gynaecologist, and I went to bed this night, and the following day I woke up and I was no longer pregnant. It's taken me many years to come to terms with it and to even talk public about it. It's only about 3 or 4 years ago that I've been game enough to express the feelings of stress and that over that. But my husband and I, we never talked about it, never ever talked about it after that. All the gynaecologist and my own family doctor could say was, well, it obviously must have been a phantom pregnancy. But of course, being a woman and you're pregnant, you certainly know about it, especially at 5 months. From then on, about 2 years later, about a year and a half later, I did fall pregnant and I had a little girl. When my daughter was 2 years of age, I was diagnosed with having cancer of the larynx and lungs, and they say that you don't get over that. I was due to go into hospital and start radiant treatment and all these treatments that I was on for for a number of months. And of course, for about 5 months, I had no voice, I couldn't talk. I went to bed this night and I had what I thought was a dream, and this beautiful being came to me and told me that if I did go into hospital I'd never come out, that they had work for me to do and I'd eventually have to return back across the Tasman where I'd be doing my spiritual work. So the next morning I woke up and got out of bed and jumped out all excited, and I said to myself, I'm not going to die. So that was the most profound thing in my life, that I wasn't going to die. So from then on, I got in my car, took my mother-in-law, and instead of heading for Palmerston North, where the hospital where you had to go for the radium and treatment for cancer, I turned and I went in the opposite direction and headed to a little place called Greytown. Now, if you could imagine a feeling of not, even though you're sitting behind the wheel of the car, it's like you're not driving it. It's like a force was driving that car. I eventually drove around to these back streets, out into the rural area, and drove into this property, up this gravel driveway, got out, went across, knocked at the door of this house, and the gentleman opened the door and said, come in, I've been expecting you. So you can imagine what I felt. So he told me to come in, sit down, and after a period of time he came and stood in front of me and he said, it's no accident why you came here, you were directed to come here to receive this healing. He said the cancer's certainly spread, it's starting to go into your spine, etc., etc. If you do exactly what you're told, you'll be healed. And then he said, well, you realise who sent you here, don't you? And I thought, my God, what does he mean? What's he talking about? And he said, well, you have had encounter with what you call UFOs ever since you were a little girl. And he said, that is where the healing's coming from. So he said, if you do what you're told, you'll be healed. But he said, when you leave here at 12:10 today, when you go out and look up in the clear blue sky, you'll see 2 of them. And you can imagine that I was still pretty sceptic, that I really didn't believe a lot of this, what he had told me. But I was quite fearful of the fact that he actually knew all about what had been happening to me. So I left there, and sure enough, when we went out, it was about 12:10, we looked up in this clear blue sky, and there's these 2 round silver discs sitting up in the sky. I couldn't estimate, maybe about half a mile or abouts, and one was over the top of the other, one was sort of slightly to the side, to the left, so you could distinguish that there were 2 separate discs. My mother-in-law is Scottish. She's now 96, God bless her. But at the time she was a very strict Presbyterian and didn't believe in any of this. But it was quite profound for her to see 2 round silver discs in the sky. So from then on, I eventually had a lot of other experiences. We had on Boxing Day of 1978, we had a UFO land. It was in the paddock at 4:30 or 4:20 on the Boxing Day morning, just after Christmas in 1978. Prior to that, there was a lot of sightings. It was a time when Frederick Velichek disappeared. We had lots and lots of sightings. I remember the New Zealand government at the time, the Prime Minister, put them down to reflection of lights from squid boats around the New Zealand coastline. But in the Wairarapa, during the daytime, people were seeing these UFOs coming in and out of the water when people were out at Riversdale or Castle Point, cigar-shaped UFOs, round discs coming in and out of the water and flying over them like as though they were playing games. So, you know, there were thousands of people were seeing them. So I think we become very blasé after a while, after seeing them so often. After that, it was on New Year's Day. Oh, I beg your pardon, digressing to that Boxing Day scenario, we had to take our daughter to put her on the plane to Melbourne, and we had to, because it was a couple of hours driving to Wellington. So my husband got up early, and so when he called out and said, "Look, come and have a look at this. Look, it's over in the paddock. There's this huge orange pulsating light." And it was just sort of slightly off the ground. It was quite large. Now, if you looked over into the east, you saw the morning star and the sun coming up, and the moon was going down in the western side. And here's this big orange ball, sort of not far from this old hangars left over from when the Americans were in the Wairarapa during the war. And there's this big orange globe. So, of course, I wanted to climb over the fence and go towards it because my husband wouldn't let me. So, but after we watched it for a while, it was rather amazing. It was there 1 minute and then it just went out and just disappeared. On New Year's Day of the 1st of January 1979, we were staying in a little place, a friend's place in Martinborough. And actually it was rather interesting because at the time we hadn't realised that Quentin Fogarty was staying only 2 houses down. We stayed with friends, we slept in their lounge, and we had 2 little Pomeranian dogs that slept beside us on the floor. And early hours of the morning, as it started to get light, the little dogs just went absolutely crazy, and they kept running to the door, and then they'd run and they'd try and push themselves under the couch. So I got up to have a look, and as I opened the door and looked out into Grey Street, there is this round silver disc just below the lights of the street lights, slowly going along the street. Now it would probably be the size of a extremely large car. That was about the size. And it was like as though it was looking for somebody, and it was just moving slowly along the street. And my little dogs and my husband, I said, "Quick, come and have a look at this." So we just watched it as far as we could. And then after that I got a little bit apprehensive, so we quickly shut the front door and came in. But my friends, amazingly enough, slept through the whole lot, even though we were yelling at them to come and have a look. So they were just some of the experiences I've had over the years. My journey from then on, I went up to, I'll just quickly touch on these dates because we don't have much time. That's part of my background, but on the 13th of April 1986, about a month before I'd given a message, because I've always said to them, even though I used to get messages channeled to me and I used to get things in writing, I used to say to them, I really want proof. It's all very well seeing these UFOs flying around the sky, but I have to have proof that you really exist. And what exactly do you look like? So I got a message to say that if we went on they gave me the longitude, latitude and the date and time to go to this place, which turned out to be Eyre in North Queensland. So on the 13th of April, we finished up on a mountain called Mount Inkerman, and 7 of us were up there, and right on the time they told us, at 5 to 9 on the 13th of April 1986, these strange lights which we'd been watching for some time in the sugarcane, which I just logically assumed they were big arc lights where people grow flowers and things under. These lights slowly, there were 2 came up out of the sugar cane and flew over the top of us, 2 more came up, and another 2. And as we were about to leave to go down after about half an hour or so, my husband said, "I wonder if there's any more of these strange lights around, these UFOs." And just then, one came up and flew over the top of the 4-wheel drive vehicle. Now the people that took us up, he was a Baptist and he didn't believe in any of this, but he was a very nice man. He had a 4-wheel drive and did offer to take us strange people up to this mountain. So that was and anyway, 12 months later, it was the 21st of August 1987. They told me, or some months earlier, that on that particular date they would show themselves, and I said, well, I do need to see you in the physical. So on that date of the 21st of August 1987, we went for a trip up into the Gulf, and on the way back from Currumbin, we were about 2 hours outside of Georgetown, and we stopped on this causeway to have a drink because it was so dusty and we'd been driving for hours, and it was about 5 to 1 at that time. We stopped to have a drink and something to eat. The chap who we went with, he was a tour operator, and he wanted to plan out a new strategy for his tours. So he took us along for the ride, so we had a 2-week holiday with him. As we stopped, now I don't know if anyone that's gone out west or up into the Gulf, there's a lot of the roads are unsealed, and you have that dust, and if anybody's coming towards you or in front of you, you can see them for as far as the eye can see, because it's so flat. The only thing you have around you is anthills. We stopped on this causeway. I guess we were there for a few minutes when this 4-wheel drive vehicle came towards us. And in that 4-wheel drive vehicle were 2 extremely tall, slim, young couple, a male and female, dressed in combat gear with caps on. And as they went past, they bowed to us and smiled and kept going. And I remember saying to Ken, "Is the army up here doing manoeuvres?" And he said, "Well, you know, I've been coming up this way for many years and I've never ever seen the army up here before." And I said, "Well, isn't that strange?" Within seconds, they were back again, and they were parked probably about 15, 20 feet from us. And they both bowed in unison and said, "Can we be of service to you?" Well, you know, if you meet an Aussie out back, they don't usually bow to you and ask if they can be of service. That's one thing you do know when you travel around in these places. The female they were both looked as though they were in their mid-20s. They had very, very clear white skin. Their heads were covered with these caps. I wasn't able to see their hands, but they seemed to have very long arms. I guess you could say they were so tall that their heads were touching the roof of the 4-wheel drive vehicle. As Ken was explaining to them that we just stopped to have something to eat, I was looking at the female and I thought to myself, "You're rather strange. You're obviously not from around here." And she shook her head, and I telepathically said, "You're reading my mind, aren't you?" And she nodded and smiled. And I said, "Are you the people that I've come to meet?" And she nodded and smiled. So I said, "So in other words, you are the ones that I've been communicating with all these years?" She nodded again, and I said, "Well, I'm going to come round the back of this trailer we're towing, and I'm going to get closer, and I want to touch you to see if you really exist." As we went round the trailer that we were towing, all of a sudden everything went totally still. Absolutely. Even the cattle that were sort of grazing under the trees on the bank, the bush noises, the birds, everything became totally and utterly still. You could hear a pin drop. Next thing I know, we're getting in our car, they're driving off, we jump in the car to follow them, and they disappear in front of us. They're no longer there. So of course the 4 of us then drive for the next several hours into Atherton. And by the time we got to Millamilla, we put the radio on in the car, and all our watches were 25 minutes slow. So, you know, that's one of the encounters. The next encounter, I'll skip that because sometime later I got a message to say that I was to go overseas and I would make communication and contact with other people. There's so much said about little greys, but we don't talk about these human people that live here on this earth that look like us. They may be a lot more intelligent, but they're here. The next time I had my encounter, over a period of time, I've been taken on many journeys into Hawaii, into various parts of America, where I've had communication with the most amazing people. I've become a member of the Institute of Noetic Sciences that is run and was started by astronauts and scientists in these fields. I have spent time with senators from Washington and scientists where I've been shown many things. Because I guess they take a great interest in someone like me that's had physical encounters and contacts over the years. But the amazing things that I have seen when I was with Dr. Glenn Grant in 1993, we were in Manoa Valley filming. Because when I go over to Hawaii, I spend 2 to 3 months of the year there teaching and working in the spiritual field, as well as doing my clairvoyance and mediumship on radio talkback shows. Spiritual World Network, which is a radio show that goes right throughout the Pacific and out through the South America and Europe. I was taken by Dr. Glenn Grant because we were doing research. He's a criminologist and researcher from the University of Hawaii. And we went down to Manoa Valley where we were doing some work, And it was fairly late at night, and we were down in the very end of Manoa Valley. Over many years there have been reports of strange lights, strange cloud formations, and people are often talking about these lights. We were there this particular night, and after just prior to filming, I had commented about a house up at the top of the hill. What an unusual place to actually build a house overlooking a Chinese cemetery. And because I made light of it, as I often do, because I believe in all this work you have to have a sense of humour. I think sometimes we can take ourselves too serious. So anyway, what I did, I said to him, what a strange place. And he said, yes. He said, there's 3 people moving around there. And I said, oh, it must be one of those 2-storey houses. Looks like they must be getting ready for bed. And it was a funny yellowy colour light that was coming out of these windows. And there were 3, and you could see the outline of 3 people. Anyway, so we got on with what we were doing, and we finished what we were doing, put our cameras in the car, ready to go, when one of the American ladies that was with me, she squealed out and she said, oh my God, in her American accent, look at those strange long white legs. Well, I thought that she was having me on, because earlier in the day and night, she said to me, what do you see around the cemetery? Well, what would you say? I said, I see Chinese gambling, I see a woman floating going, ooh. So I was being flippant, you see, and I thought, well, here she is, she's pulling my leg. But when I turned and looked up the road, there's this extremely tall lady walking towards us. She would be over 7 foot tall, in a white tunic with high boots, extremely long, black, tight, curly hair, with the most translucent white skin, almost as white as her tunic, walking towards us down the hill. Now, just before this happened, we were commenting on the formation of the clouds. There were some clouds that were quickly moving, there were others that were not moving. They were a funny reflection of light. They looked a little bit on the orange side. But we sort of logically said, well, obviously it must be the street lights reflecting, or the lights up the hill. Anyway, as she came towards us, I guess she was probably from here to where Martin's sitting away, and I said to her, you certainly gave us a fright, are you for real? And she said, I certainly am. And I said, well, did you come from that house up on the hill? And she said, no, that's not a house. Well, when she walked past and I got closer, I guess her legs could have almost come to nearly here. I was just dwarfed by her, she was so tall. And the way she walked, she was taking a big long steps. So we were quite, a bit flabbergasted, and the scientists were, they were sort of looking, couldn't believe what they were saying. So Glenn said, well, let's get in the car and drive up the hill and have a look. So we did. We went up the top of the hill, and there's a roundabout at the top, and we got out. All there is trees, and the sheer drop down over into a valley down below. There's no way anyone can take a shortcut through there. When we turned and looked up into the sky, there's this huge orange glow pulsating above us. So I said to him, well, that's a UFO. Well, he hadn't seen anything like this before. So then we jumped in the car and we gave chase for the lady, but she disappeared. So on the radio and the news the next day in Oahu and Honolulu was the news about these scientists from the University of Hawaii having this amazing experience with this tall lady. So, as they said, there has to be a logical explanation for all this. But, I think one of the things that I'd like to wind up with this is a little thing that I've written, if I can find it among all my notes. There's been quite a number of experiences I've had where I've been directed to go and meet people, spend time with people on different islands. We had a case on Molokai where we were on a beach in this lonely area where 2 very well-dressed men in suits, grey suits, got out of the car, parked near the beach, walked down towards us, looked at us, and then picked up their cases and walked up the road a few hundred yards, and then sort of walked through a fence, and we didn't see them again. They disappeared. So when we got in the car, we thought we'd drive up and have a look, and it's all barbed wire fence. There's no gates, nothing. And they just walked through this fence. So one wonders, are there certain people like myself that just see these sort of things, or is there other people that, when our awareness is open, I had to come to the realisation that there's a lot of military bases on these places, where I know I was taken to one on Schofield Base where which is owned by General Electric, where they do a lot of dual warfare and a lot of UFOs are seen coming in and out of there. And I mean, so this is the first time I've been opened up in public and talked about this, so I bet I should take some insurance policies out, shouldn't I? But I was taken by a top naval man onto this base because he felt it was important. Because I work with energy, he wanted to show me a few things. So I climbed this mountain, finished up there, getting up there in the dark where this underground bases are. He took me up because he trains his men to jump off mountains and out of planes. And he said he was up there one afternoon. They usually have to be off there by 3, but they were late getting up there. He was up there at 4 when they were sitting there talking, 8 of them, and all of a sudden there was this noise and a UFO come up out of the base, flew over past them. A green ray came off that, and they all got burnt. Right. But he said over a period of time the mountain was falling away, and he said the energy is very unusual. So he took me up to have a look at it. And then what happened after that? In the dark we had to find our way back down this mountain. Very steep, if anyone's ever been to Hawaii and see how the mountains come up into peaks. So what happened in the dark? It was completely dark, not a cloud, not a star in the sky, the moon, it was just completely black, and we had to find our way down. Fortunately for me, this man was a climber, experienced, so I was able to do what he said, to use the chi energy. You make yourself light, your body light or heavy, whichever way you're going. As we came down, we sort of took the wrong path, and with him it was all right because he knew where the rocks were, but I had to sort of climb across, and he had to hold his hand under my foot while I changed my hand grips and moved my feet. Unfortunately, I fell, and fortunately for me, there was a rock about 20 feet below. I managed to get my knee jammed and saved me falling another 800 feet. But that's another story. But the interesting thing was, he said to me, we have to get off this mountain because they start toning very shortly. And I found out what they did. And you know, I'm still that was the realisation I had, that I knew where Steven Spielberg got his idea for the Close Encounters of the Third Kind, because the sound waves they send out are much the same, the sound of these waves of energy that goes up and down. It just about tears your solar plexus and your heart and everything else. It's the most horrible sensation. But I guess I could say I was never so pleased to get off that mountain and get down to safety. Right, I just want to quickly wind it up by, I just wanted to make a point here. I did a few notes which I guess I got off to many other different areas, but in my conclusion, we talk about the universe and the models and that of our universe. I believe that in life, if we could just realise that scientists will have a difficult time dealing with the facts that there are other realities, dimensions, and perhaps even universes, that their precious scientific methodology is but an illusion. To go beyond their present understanding of science, they will have to venture into the world of the mystical and spiritual and the paranormal. For humanity, the lesson is that we are interconnected to all living things. This awareness tells us that we must respect all else as we do ourselves, and that means all else. Animals, plants, the air we breathe, the rivers, the lakes, the oceans, and the earth itself. It tells us that we must have tolerance and show respect for others regardless of race, religion, skin colour, nationality, sex, sexual preferences, or planet of origin. How many of us can say we are able to do that? Another message from the reality beyond the rainbow is that human consciousness is another example of non-locality. It is capable of wondrous things. It is capable of tapping into the knowledge of the universe if we let it. We have always called this power intuition and accepted it as one of those weird things in life. But I believe that it's much more than that. Intuition is merely one example of how our consciousness, our soul, if you wish, is trying to desperately to communicate with us. Once we connect to this higher self, we will discover that we are amazingly powerful beings. We will find that we are co-creators of our reality. And once we become fully aware of this, it will be clear that we must use our powers carefully. For example, we must exercise caution in developing technology in a spiritual void, without regard for the destructive forces that we unleash. One of the most important things that I've been told by these spiritual communications is the message that mankind is in danger of destroying what we have, and we have to learn to respect and love and look after our world. I will leave you with this analogy. I believe that we are like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, who found herself beyond the rainbow and followed the yellow brick road vainly, trying to find her way back home. In the end, she realised that she had the power to return all along. All she had to do was to click the heels of her red ruby slippers 3 times and her wish would come true. We ufologists have been peering through telescopes, microscopes, collecting soil samples and analysing photographs and videotapes for nearly 50 years. And we are no closer today in proving the existence of UFOs than we were then. Maybe it is time for us to realise that we are all wearing the red ruby slippers. Just like Dorothy, we have had the power to understand the mysteries of the UFO, and more simply by going within ourselves and connecting to our higher consciousness. For the mysteries we seek to solve lie in another reality. Over the rainbow and the yellow brick road is merely a holographic image of our minds. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much. Just for those that are interested, I'll just quickly show you photos of these ET that was found captured in Hawaii, in Brazil. These are drawings that were done. This is a drawing of the young girls that found. One was 20, one was 16, and the other one was 13, that came across what they thought was an injured animal. Now, I do have photos here as well, and I can quickly show you some of the UFOs photos. In a minute, we'll show. This is where these ETs were found. This is the hospital they were taken to. This was the military officers that have come forward with information. The one on the left is Professor Adamar Javad, who runs the UFO research in Brazil. And these are the 3 of the young girls that actually found and came across these humanoid people. And I'll just show you, if you just bear with me a second, I'll show you the photos of the UFOs. There's a lot of activity over in Brazil and Mexico. We're very fortunate to have Jaime Mesa, who is the 60 Minutes producer and of 60 Minutes in Mexico City, who's going to be here in October. That's going to be showing you all the films that were in Mexico City. This one here you'll probably be very interested in. That was taken out the window. That is, if you see, it's a plane and you can see the UFO over the top of it. Here's another one. These ones come from Brazil, these ones. You'll probably be interested in these. You'll see that this one was taken, these ones have been taken in the last few years. This one was taken back in the early 80s. This is another one that was taken. I'm not sure whether I've got that up the right way or not. Hang on. Another one. These ones are a little older. These ones were taken in 1989. I've been very fortunate that Adamar has given me the permission to show you these today. This is another one. That was number 14, which was that was in 9th of March 1993, those ones were taken. There is one now, this one's rather an interesting looking one. Makes you wonder, it looks like a dolphin or something, doesn't it, flying through the air. Now these ones are, a lot of these have been thoroughly researched. Now this one here is quite an old one. This was actually taken, this one was taken in 1957, this was taken, and these were in the files of one of the journalists that have been hanging on to these for a number of years. So I just thought I'd like to share those with you. There's another little one here, if you can just see it here. The other thing that we'll be discussing in October will be the actual information that's come out about the alien implants that Dr. Kerr in California in May of this year has removed 3 implants from 3 different patients. There is quite a lot of information and technology on these for which will be released then, but I just thought I'd share them with you. They have tested, and there's nothing on this earth they can't even cut through them. The other one was an implant taken from the back of a man's eye, where it appears they think it was a minute camera. They've done tests, but we're waiting further information from another university in the States on that. Anyway, thank you very much. Has anyone got any questions? I use it, but I more work in the media as a spiritual minister, and I work in... Well, any power is good if it's used properly, but if it's not, it can be destructive.
What you meant when you said the tone in the mountain?
Beg your pardon?
I was wondering what was meant when you said the tone in the mountain.
The toning. Well, it was sound waves that were going out. But if anyone had seen that film, Close Encounter, and they had that noise when the spaceship came down, well, it was along similar lines to that. And these waves, they're like frequency waves, go out across the Pacific. But, you know, I've spoken to people since, and I believe that they could also have something to do with the problem with our mammals beaching themselves and problems that it causes in the ocean. But I don't have evidence of that. That's my summation on that one. Thank you. One more question? Yes?
Glennys, most ufologists who've done research over years have also come across reports, evidence, information which talks about the aliens or extraterrestrials that look just like us. Given that fact that even Robert Dean talks about them actually living among us, do you feel that, given your experiences and knowledge, that the agenda of various extraterrestrial beings and races can vary greatly, and that in fact the extraterrestrials or beings that look exactly like us could be in a certain degree of danger on this earth if their identity or being was sort of known?
Well, you know, the ones that I've had communication with over the years are extremely intelligent. They've said that they've given scientists knowledge to help humanity and help mankind, but unfortunately a lot of it's become very destructive. It's been used for destructive purposes. Yes, I guess they probably would feel unsafe or in danger. Because after all, we're the most worrying planet in the universe. What would happen if the alien ship landed in the main street of Brisbane? The first thing people would do, they'd run and get a gun. And they'd want to shoot at it. So that's what our intelligence, and we can't even get our own lives together without wars and problems. So, you know, why would they want to show themselves or come in mass landings? There's lots of talk about mass landings, but you know, until we learn to find our own spirituality and balance our own lives, I think that's the reason why they're here.
What I was getting at also was that several overseas researchers from people I know have also indicated communication with beings just like us.
Yes.
But they are virtually fear incognito. Some of their fears seem to stem from fear of what authorities would do if they were aware of their presence.
Well, you know, I haven't actually discussed that with them. Most of the ones that I've had communication are it's very concerned that we develop our own spiritual growth and to try and find peace. You know, it's like a domino effect. And, you know, it's bringing unity. But they always seem to appear very much when there's either nuclear explosions going on or we're being very destructive to our own planet. So, I don't know, I don't have an answer. I find the answers, I think, are contained within ourselves. I find that we have to take personal responsibility for our own lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Glennys Mackay.